I'm just gonna add. Can I just add like a logging statement?
Yeah. I would say take another 15 minutes to try and figure out what's going on. But if you still can't figure it out, let's just quickly take an effort to get the vanilla one. Prove that works. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
I have two target markets for my website. One is the creator. I want the creators to be able to start earning money through their work on Entity. And two, the viewers. I want them to be able to find quality films quickly and with ease.
Go further. I mean, everyone's obviously quite far away from selling something and competing with real companies. Yeah.
Hi, Scott.
Hey.
Hey, thank you for spending time. And I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of questions from my potential readers on this school. All right. So I'll start sending out questions.
Yeah. Bring 'em on.
First, I think people would have known something about you from what I shared. But if you don't mind, can you share a bit about your background? Like what brought you here?
Yeah, sure.
A short history of Scott Smoller.
Yeah, I'll share my background, which may also explain why I'm doing this.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm from the US. I'm from Southern Connecticut. I grew up in a very nice town, very nice family, very well-funded school, but I did not like school. And so I think for me, I was one of the kids, I really enjoyed technology, but this was in the mid-90s, before technology was cool, so it was very not cool.
It's a distraction.
This is a distraction, exactly.
Yeah.
And the things that are good, and still now, is academics, sports, popularity, right? And so, as a young person, your worldview is shaped a lot by the adults in your life, parents and school teachers. And it was just constantly, here are the things that are good. I don't like those so much. And here's the thing that's not good, and I like that. So it really makes you also question yourself, and it makes you lose touch with your own intuition and doubt yourself. And so, I just went through kind of the whole, up through high school, just trying to do the things that were good as best as I can, even though I didn't like it, didn't think it made sense.
You have to check those boxes.
I have to check the boxes so I can then, in my own free time, do what I like, but there wasn't really a lot of support for what I like. That was more, it's tolerated if you do the good stuff.
Right.
And so then it came time to go to college, and I just went to any college. I went to the same college my dad went to. Early decision, just easy, get out of the way. I don't really care so much. And then in college, I spent a lot of time trying to be cooler. Right? So I joined the fraternity, and I did that whole kind of thing. And I graduated college, and my big conclusion after all those years of education was, I need to get better at doing the things I don't want to do. I need more discipline. And so I was actually about to join the military. Right. So that is the culmination of my education, right? I should go into the military.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I hurt my knee. And I also was kind of like, maybe I don't really want to do this. And the one thing I knew I liked actually was Japan. I had studied abroad in Japan and didn't know much about it going in, but just loved the culture, very organized, everyone's very polite, it just felt nice. And so when it was, okay, I can either do the normal new grad job application process to go into management consulting, or go into finance, or become a lawyer, or become a doctor. I don't really know what those things are, especially like finance, like how do stocks evolve? I haven't learned that. I was an economics major, thinking that was relevant for business, learned it's not relevant for business. And then I kind of ran away to Japan.
So escape.
I escaped. But it's funny is because people will look at that and go, wow, that was so courageous. And for me, though, it was running away.
This is my run away.
Yeah, so that's kind of a commentary on people are different. What's easy for someone may be hard for someone else. But I basically ran away to Japan. And I was at actually kind of an all-time low in terms of confidence. And I didn't know who I was or what I wanted to do. But now I knew it's like I need to get a job. And so I worked really hard to get a job, studied the language a lot, finally stumbled into a job in back office compliance, which was obviously not like my dream or anything growing up, but it was a job. And we were helping foreign companies come into Japan with things like accounting services, payroll services. And I start working and I have no clue about business, and I just love working. And I remember thinking in the first month of my job, I was like, I'm more productive in this past month than I've been my entire college career. Yeah.
You were then, what, 23?
I was 23, yeah. And so that was a big thing, was just the realization, it's like, wait, I thought I was supposed to not be a good worker. I thought I needed to get better at doing things
I don't like. Yeah.
And this was now a new experience. Oh, actually, I am a good worker. Maybe it was just I don't like that thing, and I do. And then it's like, what is the difference? And the difference was the authenticity. When you're working on projects for customers that have real problems, it just makes sense, right? They have a problem. They want you to help them solve it. They're not trying to hinder you from getting the job done. They're not trying to withhold information and assess you. They're trying to help you to help them. So that was a very natural, that made sense to me. And that in ways that school, in being very artificial and inauthentic, didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I actually was super successful professionally. I started in the sales team. A year later, I'm running the sales team. Get involved in consulting. A year later, I'm running also the consulting team. Get pulled into the accounting services. A year later, I'm running that. Director, COO. Within 5 years, I was running a 200-person business.
Wow.
So it's quite a big contrast, right?
You're not even 30 back then.
Yeah, not even 30.
Yeah.
Then in 2018, I leave that company. I was there for about 8 years to start my own company, and about 40 staff joined me at my company, WeConnect. And now we do global compliance services. And so then I had the experience too to see what it's like being an owner versus an employee. Go, oh, this is better. I have a lot more freedom. You can control the strategy. You can control the pace.
And more responsibility too.
but it was great. So that was definitely better for me.
Yeah.
But then what's also interesting is, everything is going great. But I have a great team and things for me, like there's less for me to do. I could, if you're an employee, you have to just fill your time because like you can only work for us and you have to just spend all your day working, right, doing things. But it was like, okay, let me open myself up to other opportunities. And that actually allowed me to start a technology company. And that then came full circle to my love for technology.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember just thinking also like, here I am, starting a technology company, spending all my time on technology, and that's now a good thing.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was a bad thing, right? And so that was successful. And then now I've started the school. But
so if you take a pause, so I think that still there was first of all such an inspiring story, because inspiring not in terms of how successful a business were. Of course, it is very successful, but it's almost discovering yourself.
That's right. So that was basically
process.
I've seen both ends of the spectrum of being totally lost and confused and having very little confidence to feeling like I've achieved at the maximum what one would consider life success.
Right.
And so I have that at least personal experience of seeing and thinking through why was it, what was the difference, right?
Yeah. Was it a trigger or input into your interest in education?
So that was the whole time I was going through my life, but especially coming to Japan, I was, how can I be happy? How can I have a good life? What, of course, people think, what is the purpose of life? And I was okay. The purpose, first, I want to be happy, and of course, it's if you can do great things in the world, and that's good. So I was really reflecting that all the time, and I was struggling to find it, and finally, I found it, and that's where I realized that, at least to me and to a lot of people, that success in life and happiness is at its core, if you can every day wake up and do what you want with people you like and do great things in the world while also making money so you can have a comfortable and free life, that's a great life. That's just like every day, like I'm happy to wake up and life is good. And at least for me, I'm happy to live that kind of life until I die. So that was the discovery of what is the goal, right? Because if you think about education, it's to prepare you for something, right? It's to prepare you for a successful future. So I felt like, at least for me, I understood and experienced what the goal should be. And that's where that is achieving life success. And we define that as the intersection of doing what you love and doing what you're good at and doing what can make money and can help the world, and doing all of that with people you care about. So if you can achieve those 5 things at the maximum, that's a great life.
You're a big winner.
Exactly. Yeah. So now I had all these goals. Like, oh, well, if that is the goal in life, then education should be as effectively as possible preparing you for that. And the current system, from my experience, is not. Right. So now I have kids. Right. So I wasn't thinking. I always kind of had like. I guess I was annoyed with how irrelevant education was, at least for me.
Yeah.
But I wasn't feeling like I needed to change it at that time.
Right.
But now I have kids.
Yeah.
And so I have kids. They're 9 and 5.
Yeah.
But when my daughter, who's the eldest, was 3.5, it was time to find schools. And I'm like, I don't want her to go through that process that I don't think makes sense. So when exploring that, that's where I discovered Montessori. And so Montessori is a student-centered education. And how they describe it is the students in the middle, surrounded by curriculum, and the teachers are facilitators. Whereas the traditional education is the teachers at the center, curriculum, and the students are. Yeah. And so my kids go to the largest Montessori international school in Tokyo, called Montessori School of Tokyo. And they're doing great, and I'm very happy with it. My eldest is now in upper elementary, but they don't have high school, right? So, and this is the concern for all the parents. Well, what about what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I don't want my kids to go up through this alternative education to middle school to then have to throw them into the traditional system that they're not prepared for because of me. But it's also a system that I don't think is necessary to achieve life success. Yeah. So that was where I started thinking I need to create, not just for my kids, but also because this is a problem that I think exists. Right. Really a holistic alternative path to life success. And that was where I wanted to do basically a more practical Montessori, right? Because some of the issue with Montessori is it's really great for developing the individual, but it's not so connected to the real world. Yeah. And so I wanted to do something that was all about authentic interests, but maximally connected to the real world to achieve that life success. So I had all these ideas, but at the time I was just another parent with ideas. Every parent has ideas. They don't get a lot of attention. But I was talking to other parents, including even Montessori parents, about these ideas. And even them, they're like, life is about doing things you don't want to do. And so we have to prepare our kids. They have to learn how to do that. Yeah. Right? And so it was kind of this idea of like
fitting this world.
Yeah, it's like life is hard. Yeah. So let's prepare our kids for a hard life by simulating hardship when it's almost like the hardship is by design. Right? And I'm like, but I at least know from my experience that doesn't have to be the case. Because I think the fortunate thing is I experienced a successful life that's not like that. Yeah. And so I know it's possible, but I think other people would think maybe that's naive. You can't have that kind of life. Well, I have it, so I know it's possible. So
or it's accidental.
But at least it's possible.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was where I was fortunate last year to get involved with an international boarding school in Karuizawa, UWC Isaac. And they were redesigning their grade 10 leadership program. And they had a task force that included students and faculty and alumni, and I was able to join that task force. And that was where I was able to start talking about my ideas to actual high school students, and they're all like, yes, we want this. And also, all of the task force agreed as well. And so we rolled out a pilot, essentially, of what I'm doing here, which is this was just for one grade, one class, but let's remove all external influence. Let's test the extent of natural motivation. And the class was just, we'll help you find an interest and do a project over the course of the year.
And those are 14, 15-year-olds?
Yeah, 15-year-olds. It was grade 10. And there were 50 students, and we had 5 coaches. So in addition to helping design the program, I personally coached 10 students throughout the year. And I was going up there every week.
Wow.
Yeah. And just the results were amazing. So it's obviously, everyone's different. I'm not all about one-size-fits-all education, but everyone really enjoyed it. They all thought it was very meaningful. And then especially a lot of students too, just putting so much effort into their projects outside of class. Because without grades, without any external punishment, right, without the stick or the carrot, it's like, well, it's only 3 hours a week. You could do the minimum and you'll pass. So the fact that so many students are putting so much effort into it really shows if you give them authentic work that aligns to their interests, they're ready to put in the work and do great things. Yeah. And so I just felt a full-time program around this concept has to exist. And as you probably know, it's very hard in existing schools to implement this kind of
right, because there are so many intrinsic, already structures there, and it's usually pretty rigid.
Exactly. There's so many constraints. You have, if you're doing IB, which is a great program, but that pretty much dictates the curriculum.
Right.
If you're part of, for example, the school up north or part of UWC, that brings other requirements. And just, every school has their own mission and goals.
Yeah.
And so that was where I felt it was time. I validated the hypothesis with experience with a lot of students. And so let's do the full-time school. And that was back in April.
Yeah.
And earlier this year I had met my partner Kai. And we're like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And we did it. It's gone great.
I know this is real, and we've seen the students. But I'm sure when you first started, there must be a lot of doubts in your own head. Yeah.
Actually, there was no doubt.
There was no doubt.
So I'm someone, I don't come to conclusions carelessly. Until I have personal evidence, it's just a hypothesis. So this started 3 years ago when I had the hypothesis talking to other parents, but really especially having the opportunity to validate it at the school last year. That was like the pilot. And it was just clear 100%. That removed any doubt. And so I had full confidence in how this program can actually help effectively develop people for that life success. And I have that skill set of how to train and coach people through that process.
Yeah.
So the program and the methodology, that was 100% confidence. The only real uncertainty was just, now this is going to be a full-time school.
Right.
This is going from me helping out with one class to a full-time school. But we just, we just kind of went first principles. What do we need? What matters? And, I will say a lot of learnings. One of the most important things is that no matter what anyone thinks of college, it needs to be there at minimum as a backup. And so the big thing was, how can we make this program also work for college? And that's where we worked with a good friend and expert in the college admissions process, just really get into what do colleges really care about. Actually, a lot of people don't really know that. They think they know, but they don't really know. And that
it's
was
a big industry already.
It's a big industry. It's a big industry. And look, to their credit too, they have to go through so many applications in a very short period of time. So when you only have 4 minutes to review any application, you need to make your case very concisely and strongly. And so
in a few keywords.
In a few keywords, right? So we were able to make it work with the guidance of experts without sacrificing our values to make it work for college as well. Because really, colleges actually want this too. And so it's just a matter of how can you though also check the boxes that they need you to check to consider you. But the advantage for our students is because they spend so much time working on projects that are authentic to their interests with our strong guidance and coaching, their outcomes are really significant. And when it comes time, whether it's to college or any external person, to prove your passion and motivation and depth of expertise, they'll have that in spades versus a traditional school.
Excellent. So I think a few things came to mind. One is the sense of clear vision. So I think that's very important when you start anything, especially you know a bit of my background. That was how we felt around that time too, because people do ask me, "Hey, you're very courageous, like you're very brave." I was like, not really, because if you see something very clearly, that's the path to take. So I think this also relates to your earlier career success, right? I'm sure at the essence, I always say the same. I think in essence, if you look at beyond the surface, things are the same. Is how do you develop a sense of direction or vision? And of course, you're doing that through building the school, but I'm sure you're also instilling that into the students.
100%, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So our core project-based learning methodology revolves around that. And we call it the Innovators Framework. And it's this iterative process that the students are doing, but I'm still doing, and you're doing, and we're all doing our whole life. And there's 5 steps. And the first one is, given what I know about myself at the moment, and that will change, but at the moment, what is the most exciting way I can imagine the world to change? And this is first establish a grand mission. So we're very mission oriented
Mm-hmm.
because you want to have a path that doesn't have an endpoint. So when the bigger you set the mission,
Yeah.
just it's very clear that's what you're working towards throughout your whole life.
Right.
So to really validate your passion, do you want to work on something that you're just happy to move the needle a little bit on before you die? You're not going to say, so let's say curing cancer. A lot of people working on it. Probably we're not going to cure cancer maybe in our lifetimes, but people are passionate and motivated to work towards that. So you set your grand mission, and then step 2 is anything worth doing. There are tons of people and organizations on the front lines of that mission. Who are they? Research them, find them. Find the one that is most exciting to you at the moment, right? So now you have the most exciting mission, the most exciting frontline company. Okay, well, if you want to now get to the front lines yourself to start innovating, you have to work towards that. It's just a step-by-step process. Where are you at now? Well, when you first start the process, you're at 0. Okay, cool. So this is then, the third step is designing what we call next step project. What is the most accessible way to start working effectively towards the front lines to build experience, expertise, knowledge, skills, credibility, but in a way that's accessible to you for where you're at. And so that's where it's so essential with the coaches who have the experience to help design those projects collaboratively with the students. Okay, so now you have a project, and usually that's maybe a 1-2 month project, right? And these are really just milestones on your way to the front lines and the grand mission.
Right. Yeah.
Step 4, you do it. And in doing it, you learn more about yourself, right? Because that's the thing. The reason why at any point in time you have to just go with what you know at the moment, because you're not going to get more information unless you do something.
Right.
So the doing of the project helps you validate your hypothesis. Well, I thought I liked these things. Now I'm doing it. I've learned a lot. Do I still like it? Maybe, maybe not. Why not? So there's this huge reflection process.
Right.
And so at the end of the project, at the very least, you have a nice outcome. You have a project deliverable, which is good for your portfolio. You'll have developed expertise, skills, and knowledge relevant to the thing that you believe is the most exciting, interesting thing to you. And now you reflect. If it was, I thought this was interesting, but actually for these reasons, X, Y, Z, I don't want to do it, great. This is where you go back to step 1, and now maybe your mission will change, because with the new information, you have a new mission. Or maybe the mission stays the same, but now you have a new frontline company. Or maybe it's just a different approach. So or maybe you go, yes, I still love this, I want to go deeper. And now you go back to the process again, but the mission is the same, the frontline company is the same, and now it's just I was this went from 0 to 1, now I'm going from 1 to 2.
Right.
And so this kind of zigzaggy trial and error process ultimately is to help the students find a thing that they're interested in enough to want to keep doing the hard stuff and keep going deeper.
Right.
And because this process is so flexible, we're not trying to lock students into the one mission for the rest of their life, right? Parents might go, how can my child who's 14 know what they want to do? But it's not about that. You're going to keep reflecting throughout your whole life. So the important thing for the school is to learn that process. So when you leave the school, you can continue to do that independently throughout the rest of your life.
Yeah. Well, this is the first time I heard you saying that systematic. It's very moving, because that's something I was sharing in some of my sort of theory as well. I said that everybody wants success, but we oftentimes look at success as the result. Of course, the result will come, but it's the making of that so-called success. So I say it's a bi-directional journey. So one direction you're going bigger, like you say, it's a mission, right? So like, what are you aiming for? The aiming, of course, we talked about you want to have a comfortable life, but that's not your mission, right? So that's more an outcome or byproduct of that.
Exactly.
So that's the upper side, which is you go bigger, and then the other side is you go deeper. That's what you're saying, reflection, right? So it's those questions you ask yourself, it's those obstacles you run into, the self-doubts you have around, like, is this the right direction? And that gave you room to reflect. And once you have these 2 anchor points, and this entire space in the middle can become more fluid. It's the fluidity that gives the life its energy, right?
That's right.
It's like, because I think exactly, I guess the type of frustration you felt, similar to what I felt about education, is that we're only looking at the middle. We don't care about that one. Yeah, we talk about it, but we don't really believe in it or care about it. This deep reflection, that's psychology. Let's not worry about that. Let's just focus on getting your scores. right? Let's focus on getting certain things checked, as you say. But actually, no. If your life is like that, that's why it's suffocating, right? So it's like through those two directions when you go bigger and go deeper, and then that fluidity, the zigzag, and that's all the energy and the innovation, the novelty and the fun comes through. Yeah.
Exactly. It's so important to have the ultimate mission always in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
Because that will drive your decisions.
Right.
Right. You can set. So if you think of the big mission, and let's just use a company that I think is great. Let's say SpaceX.
Okay. Yeah.
So SpaceX, their ultimate mission is they want civilization to be spacefaring, right? And then you go down. So that's the grand mission.
Yeah.
And then you go one step further down, and it's let's have a civilization on Mars, right?
Yeah.
And you go one step down, and it's like, well, let's just first get to Mars, right? And so what happens is you have the grand mission, and everything along the way becomes a milestone. But what if you instead confused a milestone with the end goal? It will change everything. So SpaceX, they have Starlink, which is their amazing satellite constellation to do satellite internet, right? There are tons of companies like OneWeb or others. Their mission is just a satellite internet, right?
Yeah.
And so when you have that mission, first of all, everyone you bring into your platform, into your organization, if they're aligning with our end goal is just satellite internet, right? So now you're bringing in people who only have this idea as the end goal. And then what happens when you achieve that? You just start focusing on profit maximization, right? Yeah. But instead, for SpaceX, achieving Starlink is just a milestone towards something bigger. And they're doing it because it's relevant to the mission.
Yeah, it's a necessary step. Yeah.
That's right. And so you always want, if you have the grand mission in the back of your mind, all the decisions will be about that. You'll still be doing these amazing things along the way, but you'll be doing it more effectively towards the mission. And if you relate this to education, like you just said, basically the mission of a public high school is we have certain skills and knowledge that we think are important, and we need to distribute them to you, and we need to assess if you've acquired them.
Yeah.
That is the mission.
It. Yeah.
That's it.
And we evaluate all the schools on that.
Right. And so then everything is just about that, and there's nothing about, well, what about beyond that, right?
None of my business.
Right. So for us, we set, just like with the students, our mission is we want every person to maximize their chance to be successful in life to those 5 points, right? So that's what we're doing. And yes, there's a lot of things that traditional school does that we're doing too, but we're doing it because it makes sense to the mission, not just because it's the thing to do.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge thing, is to be mission oriented.
Yeah.
And then have all of your actions being about trying to achieve that.
Right. Yeah. Beautifully said. All right. So I think that actually probably will answer a lot of people's questions. Because people would say, if you look at on surface, I often say that saying, like, when I started into school, I used to say that. I said the most important thing in education is the invisible part. Because people will very easily assess you on the visible part. Oh, look at your space, look at your teacher profile, look at your curriculum. I think those are fine. But I think you so beautifully articulated what's the invisible part there as well. And I think that really answered probably a lot of people's questions. Like, if you compare you to a public high school, you probably don't have as rich a curriculum or as big a teacher body, right?
So I'm very pragmatic.
Yeah.
And I appreciate how the world works. And I'm still doing the same, but in a way that makes sense, because where other schools, they're focusing on their facilities, the beautiful campus, or their swimming pool, or their award-winning curriculum, all those things. We forego that to focus on something else, student outcomes. Because where other schools, the only student outcomes they really have is, where did the kid go to college? And you don't even know that until the end of high school, right? Our student outcomes are their projects, right? And so already we've only been operating for 8 weeks now. And the students have presented their progress and their projects probably 10 times to external guests, right? And already the feedback every time is, how old are they? 13? Doing that, right? And we're just 8 weeks in, right? And so this is where even that reaction is still, because they're still in the beginning of their first step project, it's still right now it looks like a really, really amazing school project. but they're on the cusp of actually starting to interact with external stakeholders about their project. So if we're getting that reaction already now, 8 weeks in, imagine the reaction after 3 months, 6 months, 12 months.
Yeah.
So that's where we will be showcasing the student outcomes as our way of saying we're doing a good thing, whereas maybe traditional schools are showcasing the great pool and facilities and other things.
So people should come check out the demo day.
They should come check out the demo day. Yes.
By invitation only, but hopefully we'll distribute like more.
Open to the public.
Open to the public. Here you go.
And if we have spots for 100 people, just give them the space. But if there's big demand, which it sounds like there is, we'll just do more. And then we can easily do as many as we need to.
Sounds good. Perfect. All right. Okay. So let's come back to the school itself, because I think, people who were interested in education probably have a lot of questions. So I'm trying to channel this question, right? One is from a vision to a practice. There's still, as you're doing a startup, there is usually surprises. So what were your surprises when you started running this, hitting the ground?
Yeah, so I am really experienced in starting up things in a way that is really smooth, right? And so much of it is not falling into the traps, okay?
Yeah.
Because someone who typically starts a school, the first thing they would think of is, I need a nice campus, right? And what they go do is they then go raise money. And now you've brought investors into your world who have opinions. So they're shaping the mission and values of the school. And now you've built this big school. We need students, right? And so now you need maybe 100 students. And so you have to market it in a way to just attract, maybe not necessarily the best fit students. And maybe now you're not managing expectations well. So parents and students joins and maybe it's not exactly what they expected. And you're just dealing with scaling too fast, investor pressure, parent pressure, you're just dying, right? We don't have any of that. So this is where, again, it's how can we achieve our goal in as lean and smart a way possible? And that's where we said, hey, we don't need a big campus. Let's not do it in this amazing co-working space where the students can get that as a benefit because they're around other adults.
Real people who are working.
And it gives them an authentic reason to be professional, right? Kids don't need help to learn how to be kids. They can do that after school. From 8:30 to 3:30, if they can practice being really professional and focusing on it, that's an amazing thing. So, but the co-working space, it's a pay-as-you-go per person fee and very reasonable. So that removes a lot of cost pressure. We're leveraging Khan Academy because we're a U.S. curriculum system, and Khan Academy is this amazing free platform that beautifully covers the U.S. curriculum in ways that maybe a lot of teachers in public schools are even using it in their curriculum. So the combination of Khan Academy and ChatGPT removes the need for us to have subject-based experts. And that has been incredibly validated because we do traditional academics to a certain extent, especially math and science. So that was covered that. So in terms of costs, no problem. Because they don't have cost pressure, we can be more selective with the students. So even in the beginning, where you'd think you'd want to get any student is fine, we actually still were selective and turned down in a way that the parents also made sense, a couple of prospective families, because they just weren't a good fit. What happens is if you don't bring in good fit families, now you're wasting time dealing with parents. You need to have a lot more of your time and resources spent on helping people who aren't a good fit kind of be maybe okay. Fortunately, we have 6 families and students that are a great fit. And so that really helps us, when we talk to the parents, how's it going? Oh, the students are really happy. Done. Right? So there's no time to spend on parent management. In terms of coaching the students, they all want to be here. They'll have the right mind to be here. It makes the coaching a lot easier. So that's gone incredibly smoothly. And so actually the biggest surprise is how incredibly smooth it's gone. So smooth to the sense where even, Kai and I are both here right now. It's a very good student-teacher ratio, 2 students to 6. But even then it's like, if one of us needs to be somewhere else for whatever reason, it's no problem because just everything is going so well. So there actually hasn't been truly a single issue. The biggest surprise is how smoothly it's gone starting a new school, despite everyone being like, that's impossible. That's amazing. So if I can take away, that means all the surprises are good surprises. All good surprises. On the pluses. Yes, on the pluses. If I had to say the things that were a little bit challenging, and it's not to the fault of the students, is look, we're in Japan. We're in a co-working space with working adults. You need to be at that level of professionalism. And so the students appreciate that.
Yeah.
And actually they want it.
Yeah.
But there is a learning curve. And so that's something that we've worked really close with them on, and they've come a long way.
Yeah.
But a big part of it is how do you structure this? So in the end, it's like, look, this basically here is like essentially a sacred place of working.
Yeah.
And we don't have homework, so 8:30 to 3:30, you gotta focus, right? Time is precious, and they appreciate that. And so there's not time to socialize. And so basically, we have specific times during the day where they can socialize and actually go off campus for that. But when you're here, you're working, and you're focused, and it's actually gone really well.
Yeah, excellent. So one thing they were saying in education, the most essential thing is attention, or even the focus. Yeah. So, and in theory, actually, kids have better attention span. So I don't know if you observe your daughter. I observe my daughter. If they're into something, like my daughter really likes origami,
100%.
she can do like 3 hours without stopping, right? But sometimes if you think about what we do in education, in this traditional education, because there are so many structure, so many things you want to do, you ended up disrupting that, right? So that's why when you think about, you were saying focus, because that's what I say even to adults, because I run adults workshops. I was saying, like actually our most important resource is our attention.
Yeah.
But we kind of discount that. So I need to run to this thing, run to that thing. So that's amazing you're doing that, because I think the other thing you really mentioned, which I think is very precious, is the whole point of don't underestimate young people.
Yes.
Right. So I think the school system has this, although we all say the right thing, because I consider myself in this space as well, but there is always a tendency of saying, oh, those are kids, right? We kind of put them at a different category compared to us, and they need to be babied. So this whole point of like treating them as adult, and then they actually quickly rise to it.
Yes, they do. They want that. I think, as you just said, we need to stop looking at kids as something different than ourselves.
Yeah.
As adults, do you work better when you're interested in something and you are have more creative freedom to achieve your goals, or if someone's telling you what to do? Yeah. Of course, it's the former, right?
Yeah.
And so same. So I've validated now completely. If first have it make sense to them. If it makes sense to them, they're willing to do the work. And then you add on, if they want it. If it makes sense to them and they want it, they completely are ready to put in the work, and they understand that they're ready to be held accountable. Yeah. Because if it makes sense and they want it and they agree to it and they don't do it, they understand that was their issue and they want to get better. But if it doesn't make sense and they don't want to do it, then them not doing it is just because it's almost more of an act of rebellion. Yeah. Which is what adults do too. It's not like, oh, we're kids are rebellious. No, we all
we're passive aggressive.
Yeah, we all don't want to do things that don't make sense and that we don't want to do, right?
Sometimes we do it for the money, like.
Sometimes you have to. So we've become a little bit more disciplined about doing those things, but it doesn't have to be that way. And that's where even kids who maybe have come in here with saying they have some degree of ADHD or some issue of focusing, no problem focusing at all in this school. And so to me, there's no doubt anymore at all. Yeah. If it makes sense and they want it, they're ready to be held accountable. They're ready to put in the work. They're ready to be held to high standards, and that's a positive, happy experience for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing was this. I want to go back to what you mentioned in the beginning around, when you're having those parent talks, people have this common, unfortunate assumption that life is something you don't want to do, and then so school is preparing you to that world. And especially in the East Asian culture, I would say this view has a strong hold, probably even stronger than in the US, because people view hardworking as a virtue. And of course I do too, hardworking is a virtue, but then they confuse hardworking with doing things you don't like.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. So I think that it was so interesting because I'm observing Andy, and then he actually works a lot. So and he works happily, right? So I think I want you to say something about it. So it's not about this is about happiness. Means you go play video games, right? It's actually people work a lot harder, but hard work doesn't mean you have to put on 10 hours work for things that doesn't make sense. Right.
The key is, we shouldn't settle, okay? So if someone can work hard doing something they don't like, and let's say like you're a child, or the child can work hard doing something they like, shouldn't we strive for the latter, right? And if the latter is possible, but we force the former, isn't that kind of abusive in a certain way, right? And so this is where if you can have it all, then get it all, right? And this is where traditional education, the assumption is that if the students will just want to play video games, and so anything is better than that. So it gives an excuse for adults to force their kids to do literally anything, as long as it's not video games, because it's better than nothing, right? But what that does is allow us to settle for a very inefficient system, where you can be doing something that is so boring and so horrible and not really that useful. Maybe there's 5% usefulness, but it's still better than playing video games, right? No, why don't we want to go for 100% usefulness to the students, and we've proven that if you can do that, then they agree and they want it and they're ready to put in the work. So a big issue is that with the unfortunate misconception that unless you force kids to do things, they'll only just want to mess around and play video games. It gives an excuse for adults to not have to prove why what they make their kids do is useful. It just can be anything. Right?
I remember last time you have this very beautiful analogy talking about you're a gamer yourself.
Yes, and that's, I have a lot of personal experience to know why that's the case. Because I was into technology. Right? But here's the thing, when you're a young person or even an adult, without any guidance or support, so much is inaccessible. Right? When I'm already spending 8 days at traditional school doing things I don't like, and I'm bored and I'm tired and I'm exhausted from that, and everyone in my life is saying that's important and that's not important. So then in the brief moments of spare time that I have, and I'm totally left to my own devices, and I'm not being supported, and no one's saying this is useful, am I supposed to just go figure out how to program? It's like, no, so if you like technology, what's the most successful thing? It's games, right? So it's the easy fallback, and it's an easy escape. And look, when anyone's spending, adults are the same. When you spend 8+ hours a day doing things you don't want to do, you just want to come home and just relax because you're tired, right? And so I was a gamer, but I don't play games anymore. And I think games are great. I think I can go on also about this kind of irrational bias against games. And
I understand.
Chess is good, but like this, it's like they're both
same
games.
thing.
And it's like because you're touching some wood pieces or something. Right? But anyway, so I don't play games anymore because real life is more fun than games. Right? When you have the same kinds of achievement and creative freedom and collaboration and problem solving happening in real life, why would you want to play a game instead? Right? So I think games are great. But it was very clear that my passion about games as a kid was more as an escape. And it was because I didn't have the support and because other things were not accessible than because it was the thing I really wanted to do. And an analogy I use is around like food. If you're only given 2 options, hey, you know what? Would you like ice cream or would you like mud? Which do you want to eat? Of course. Right. And again, do you want ice cream or mud?
That's it.
Right.
Always.
Wow, I think you're addicted to ice cream. Right. And I think, so this is the thing, it's like, it's easy to label someone very broadly because of specific things. So this is what happens is, it's like you don't like a certain kind of food, therefore I label you a food hater, right? And it's the same thing with kids in school. You don't like this kind of work, therefore you are a bad worker. No, but maybe I just don't like this kind of work. And this goes to the root of everyone's different. And that's why our education is all about being personalized to each individual's interest, because it has to be that way.
Exactly. So basically what you're trying to do, I think you were saying the follow-up for the analogy is that because you are not offered a healthy selection of food, right?
The ice cream is a video game, and the mud is boring school stuff, right? Exactly. Right.
There is this vegetable platter here.
Exactly. But the reality is, so here, when you offer someone the full range of healthy, delicious foods, no one wants to eat ice cream all day long.
Right? Exactly. It's escape, as you said. Beautifully said. All right. Okay. So that's the surprises or in the start. And how do you think about the future? So like, let's say if I were a prospective parent, I assume I like your concept, and I've seen the students, they look good. And then like, how many more students can you take? So I'll also use myself, but in being mission driven,
scale is not the goal. Okay, 10, 50, 100, 1,000. End of the day, it's all still a drop in the bucket if you think about global
student
impact,
body. Yeah.
right? So there's no point, and when you scale, you're just introducing operational complexity, right? Things become harder the bigger it gets. So I'm against scaling before you're ready. So of course we want to scale, because when you have a good product or a solution, you want to have as many people as possible enjoy it. But we also, the way to achieve that at the maximum in the long term is doing it right and not rushing. So we're in no rush to scale. Actually, the current cohort of 6 students is perfect. Of course, we want to grow. I think at the moment, every year, we'd probably grow maybe an additional 10 students. We are going more about being selective. You know, in even just the first 8 weeks, it's very clear the kind of student that will thrive here. And so we're going to be more selective to filter for those kinds of qualities. And so there's going to be new challenges as we scale. Then you ask, okay, well, how do you bring in new teachers, right? We want ideally to leverage peer coaching. So that's an interesting thing. How big can we get without having to bring in more adults? Because we can leverage peer coaching. I mean, who's better to teach an incoming 9th grader, some random adult that has no experience with this process, or the best student that just finished 9th grade and can just went through that process, right? So we're exploring peer coaching. Obviously, space, we will not be here. I think this place is going to last us the year. So
Good startup place.
Good startup place. And so we're talking with our partners for real estate about what would make sense as a next space. But again, we're ahead of the game on that. This is for next year, August. There's space considerations. And then the biggest thing is just, probably right now, these 6 students are getting the ideal experience. And of course, we'll get better at delivering it, but they're getting the 2 founders
directly every day,
2 adults, 6 students.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing is with any service business is, as you grow, how do you prevent degradation of quality?
Right.
Right now, we have a guest come in every week and the students present to them, because there's 6 students.
Yeah.
Well, if we have 15 students, that one guest is not going to sit through 15 presentations, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean that the students that only now present every other week? Okay, this is a degradation of quality. Does it mean we have to bring in 2 guests a week? 3? Maybe yes. So maybe, ideally we want to see, like, even as much as we grow, maybe we keep the cohorts kind of like to a size of 6. And try and ensure that we can give each group of 6 the same experience that these students are getting, regardless of scaling and logistical issues. So these are the interesting challenges that we're dealing with. But this is really kind of, we feel, quite cutting edge and happy problems.
Right.
Not otherwise. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. So it's so cool, actually. Just even the setup in Shibuya is all busy, and then the fact that they go out for lunch, just exploring different restaurants. One thing which is, you could say, very cutting edge, but also, I guess, very traditional. If you think about the successful schools, right, through human history, it's through this actually more open campus, meaning like there's no walls. As you said, maybe the one way to prevent degradation of quality is to engage more adults. Because I'm sure there's a lot more adults who are interested in that process, right? So it's almost, you need to build an engine of.
No, 100%. So that's, well, we've already also validated, as you said, this mentorship system.
Yeah.
So here is a fact. Adults love helping young people who are passionate and talented about the thing they do.
Yeah.
Okay. The problem with the current internship system is that you throw young people who have no idea what they want to do with adults who are busy.
Right.
And so really, from adults, it's just like, don't waste my time.
Yeah.
People don't want to have their time wasted, and they want their time to be as impactful as possible.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is what we found is the first project you do is what we call the foundational project. And it's using all of the resources that are freely available. I mean, basically anything you want to do a first step project. There's incredible tutorials and resources and low cost solutions that you can get online or for a very low price. So that first project is kind of more like a really cool school project. It's to get the basics and especially validate your interest. I don't want to introduce you to someone in this space until you validated that you actually like the space, right? And so once you finish the first project and you want to go deeper, not only have you validated your interest, but you now have the expertise, knowledge, skills, and a nice portfolio to give you credibility. And if I take any of those students and then say, oh, adult in this space, will you just even have a conversation with this? Oh yeah, absolutely, I'd love to. And then we find is that will help drive also the next projects. So in collaboration with the mentors, we also as the coaches can help facilitate a project that now involves the mentor in a meaningful way. And as you said then, as that goes on further and further, you have the peer coaching internally. Maybe that's more also for the younger students. And as the students progress more, they're getting this support from the other adults as their peers and coaches and mentors. And it's not about hiring necessarily a lot more coaches or teachers.
So in essence, what you're doing is really a innovation on the organization front. It's you're building an alternative organization, as you said. I think traditional schools has its organization infrastructure, and then that's almost taken for granted. And if you think about it, that's what a school should look like for the last 200 years, right? So in essence, I think what you're doing is a alternative organization. Like where do you get students, teachers? I mean, of course, you still call them students, teachers, and coach or peer, but the relationship between those names are fundamentally different.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I think that's very exciting. And then so it's integrated, it's more authentic, as you said, and it's allowing all the stakeholders to engage in something that's meaningful to them.
That's right.
That's right. Not like I'm serving you or you're paying me to do something, right?
Everything needs to be maximally authentic. That's where you get the motivation. And you get the real progress. And even on any time a student is going to take on a role that otherwise we would pay someone else for, we will pay them. So if someone's going to be a formal peer coach in a way that is replacing the need for us to hire an adult, why wouldn't we compensate them for that responsibility? So that's just being authentic. Because otherwise, it's almost take advantage of the students, in my opinion.
And you cannot abuse the child labor anymore.
But schools kind of would do that. I said in a light way.
It's true. Indeed. Excellent. All right. I think the last few questions is around like what keep you up at night or anything, or maybe nothing. But what are you thinking?
So I'm at the moment. I know ultimately will be judged based on the student outcomes. That's just the reality. Look at what the students are doing for 5 seconds. Is it cool, not cool? That's the judgment. And it takes a little bit of time for the outcome to authentically and organically, without being forced, for each student to get to a point of that's really cool. And the first step for me is just I want to get each student as quickly as possible in a way that makes sense and is good for them, to a point where they're working on projects where anyone would look at it and go, wow, that is just incredible. Because that really will validate the method. No one's going to spend time reading a white paper. Maybe they'll watch this video. Maybe they'll watch it on 2x speed, right? Because we don't have a lot of patience to go super deep. And so our whole thing is going to be the outcomes. And so I'm just always thinking, what can we do better to help the students get to those outcomes faster, but in a way that is authentic to the learning process. So that's a thing. And then just thinking and forward thinking, scaling, just how things are going to look next year. So again, it doesn't keep me up at night, but it's on my mind. And I do think that it's on my mind probably many months in advance when it needs to be on my mind. Like I started this school with my kids in mind. And I'm like 5 years early, right? So it would have made my life easier if I started it when I had my kids as the first student, right? Oh, we had student number 1 and 2. But I'm usually thinking quite ahead of the game. So on my mind, but not keeping me up at night.
Perfect. All right. Well, last question. If there's anything you want to say to prospective parents, for people who watch this interview and interested, any message you want to, like, for example, if I suppose if I'm someone who's interested in sending my kids to your school, or at least start the process, what should I know?
So what I'll first say is, don't come here for the wrong reasons. First thing is, you have to truly want and believe in this kind of education, and so does your child. So if that's not there, that's cool. Don't force it. We are not the only singular best way to educate a child. We're one option. Traditional school is great for certain students. IB program, great for certain students. So first, really decide if you want this. And of course, if you want to learn more, we're happy to explain more. So check out our website, watch the materials. And then the second one is if you want this kind of education, again, we're getting more and more selective, and life is selective, college is selective, companies are selective, investors are selective. So if this is something that you want, position your kids to have the best chance to get access to that, which means maybe if your kid right now is in middle school or elementary school, if you want this kind of high school experience or this kind of life is resonating with you, move them to an environment now that will prepare them to get selected for that kind of environment. So that's something you can do in preparation. If you like this and your kids aren't ready for high school, there are things you can do in advance to prepare. And then if your kids are going into high school, they're in high school, and you really want it, just reach out to us, and we'd have you come in, whether it's for a call or come to the campus. We do multiple interviews. Usually the first is an informational session, then a student interview and a parent interview. There's an application process, but don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Scott.
Yeah, thanks.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you. All right.